This $13,000 Supermoto is the cheapest Supermoto on the market.
Oh, I'm sure you're thinking, Jake, what are you talking about? I now know that you're completely insane.
No, I'm not.
And I can prove it because I made a spreadsheet. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how much it costs to build a bike like that. Hey, what's that?
It's a CB1000, a beautiful Honda motorcycle with gorgeous styling, and it could be all yours. That's right, we've teamed up with Phantom. Phantom. Teamed up with us to give away this motorcycle. So stay tuned for some cool content we'll be making with it. And if you're interested in getting into this giveaway, go to /Jake TGS, where you can purchase a limited piece of merch exclusive to this giveaway to be entered into the drawing.
Entries will close February 27th at 11:59 Pacific Standard Time.
So, me Sherco here, when I seen this bike some months ago now, I said, wow, that's a lot of cool bike for not a lot of money. And I said that several times in video, that this is the best value for a Supermoto I've ever seen. And that's made some of you get crazy. You're all stupid and I'm correct. The end, that's the end of the video. Whee! We must explain ourselves. I know what you're thinking, dude, what are you talking about? The DRZ's way cheaper than that. The new KTM 300 thing, the KLX 300 is way cheaper than that bike. What are you talking about? We'll do this scenario. Let's say I called up my friend and said, hey guys, I got a new Kawasaki motocross bike. And I showed up on a KLX 300, the dual sport version. And you'd say, it's not a bad bike. No one's mad at the KLX 300, it just is what it is. But that's not a motocross bike. That's the problem with Supermoto. We've never defined or come up with a better term for something like a KLX Supermoto and a actual race bike. And the term Supermoto really applies to that. And again, I'm not some gatekeeper. I'm not here to beat you up. But I want you to understand that's what I mean when I say Supermoto in the context of this video. A bike that has underworkings of a actual race bike. And that's what you have here. There's an enduro race version of this bike. It is built as a competition machine. Bikes like the CRF 450RL. Yes, that's the dual sport version, but it's underpinnings, its Goody Works, is a competition machine. A KTM 500 EXC or 450 or whichever one you want to choose from comes from a race-bred machine. There's a distinction of what we'd call real supermotos and sort of dual sport supermotos, bikes built out of dual sports. But of course, everyone's definition of a dual sport is different too. You see guys all the time. I'm out here on my KTM 450 XC dual sport. Yeah, but it's kind of more of an enduro bike. Or then people are like, this is my DRZ enduro. It's like, no, it's not. But then KTM's like, here's the 390 enduro. It's like, what? That's a dual sport at best. And why'd y'all put a side pipe on it? What the hell were you thinking? That's just stupid. I don't want to gatekeep. I hate that. I call my CRF 300L a Supermoto. I'm not against that. I've had a DRZ that was a converted one I called a Supermoto. This is the first bike I've ever bought that was a factory Supermoto, which is sort of feels like cheating to me, you know? It feels sort of like a poser. If you haven't ridden a bike built on a chassis like that, the power, the weight, it just really, it's a complete different category. Nothing wrong with dual sport Supermoto bikes. Maybe that's what we should call them, dual sport Supermotos, DSSMs. So with that in mind, you gotta think of the kind of bikes you could compare this to, and there are no other factory Supermotos in that category. You have to look at bikes that you're gonna convert. Let's look at the 500cc class bikes, or close to. We got the KTM 500 in the white red versions, Gas 500, CRF 450RL, it's not a 500. And those are kind of the main ones. I'm sure there's some other little brands here and there. There's like the old CRF 450X, that someone's ripped off one of the Chinese brands and is selling. I don't count those. We're not talking about those. What I'm really getting at is how crazy well equipped this bike comes out the box and what it would cost to get another bike set up like that. But to be fair, there are two Supermoto bikes on the market that could compare to this thing. The first one is the KTM 450 SMR, or I guess there's the Husky. I guess there's a handful of them. Okay, that is a full-blown race bike. This is where I need to specify again too. I'm talking about street legal. That thing's not street legal. I know you can convert it. I know technically these aren't street legal either right now, but they're working on it. If you go buy one from Monkey Moto, they will set it up for you legal. That bike though, like I said, is a full-blown race bike. It doesn't have lights on it. It's got the wrong size front wheel. You can't get a DOT tire for that. High-strung, high-compression motocross engine, which might be a little hot for the street. A very close ratio 5-speed, but it does have like a slipper clutch on it. I mean, it's got slicks. That thing, buy it, go to the track. I would expect that to beat this bike on the track. The other bike is also from KTM, and it's a 690 SMCR, or Gas 701. No, wait. Husky 701, Gas 700. Yeah, they do it under 3 different things. It's the same bike. That thing is awesome. I could make a great argument as to why that bike is an insane good value too. I've always heard people say, I can't believe that thing's like 12 something, 13 grand basically. If you look at the equipment it comes with, it's like, dude, that's kind of an insane bike, which is funny because it's actually, I think, cheaper than this bike is MSRP. But again, I think we're talking about a race platform bike. I can't really call the 690, 701, 700 a true supermoto. That sounds mean. I love those bikes. They're freaking awesome. Oh, I'm narrowing it down. I'm losing my argument there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Street legal supermoto. This is the craziest deal. But I know you're still thinking there's no way I can build a bike for at least the same price. Well, you see, you're wrong, and I can tell you why, because I made a chart. Well, a spreadsheet, and we're gonna see what it would cost to take some of the main competitive bikes that one might put against the Sherco, up against the Sherco to see. We're gonna see what it's gonna cost to make it like the Sherco. And it's not meant to be a, oh, which is a better bike sort of comparison. I know there's some of you out there going, well, I don't want a Sherco, I want a KTM. That's fine, that's not the point. The point is to show you the extreme value. And to do it justice, we're gonna show what it would cost for at least a few of those bikes to fully spec them out the way that the Sherco is. And then I'm gonna play with it a little bit on the other ones. And so to start with, let's just populate the MSRP. 2 of these are already more expensive than the Sherco. In fact, we have the Husky 501 right next to the Sherco because I'd actually say it might be the most comparable one just because it has some billet parts. A little bit cheaper for the KTM, a little bit even cheaper for the gas, but we do know that these bikes are essentially the same bikes. The Beta, it's kind of a good deal. Honda is the best deal, of course the Honda is. This is the MSRP. That's not including the shipping or assembly, whatever cost. There's always other costs involved. You're not gonna pay that out the door. You're gonna pay more than that. Or there's maybe really good deals on some of these bikes right now, like some of these KTMs. But we're trying to build a Supermoto, darn it, and we need a sumo kit. So let's look at some sumo kits. What I did is I went onto Warp 9's website because I found it to be one of the better deals. I could have said, oh, let's just price out Excel rims or whatever's on the Sherco. I actually don't know. There's some kind of Spanish rim, and I'm sure if you bought the equivalent rims, a good bit more. But I don't think there's a problem with the Warp 9s. I think they're built just fine. And the sumo kit from Warp 9 is really cool. You get a set of rims, mounted balance tires shipped right to your door. You just bolt them on and go. They even come with the option which we added, Michelin CP2 tire on there. That's actually perfect because that's what the Sherco came with. And those will cost you $0, of course, for the Sherco because it comes that way. Everything else, $1,463 across the board, except for the Honda, which is $1,452. I actually plugged in each one of those and built a set of rims. I tried to build them very similar to what comes on the Sherco by just doing a simple black rim. If you go on Warp 9's website and start adding different color spokes and hubs and anodizings, you can really crank up the price. I think the only reason that the Honda is slightly cheaper is there was no option on the Honda to add like the magnet clip for the front wheel for the Speedo. So I think that bike runs off of a different Speedo pickup, and hopefully it's calibratable, I don't know. That's also though with 5-inch rear rims on each one of those, which is what you get on the Sherco, which is kind of cool. Lets you run a 160 if you can fit it. Opens you up to a ton of tires if you can run a 160. It's tight on the Sherco, but I've got a 160 on it now. With a 150 is what it will come with Warp 9, which is exactly how the Sherco came. The other thing with that setup is I did it with the non-floating rotor, which is a little cheaper, but we're not even gonna run it. We're gonna get to that in a minute. You may say, well, why didn't you just order it without it at all? That's not an option. And it's actually still cheaper. Just go ahead and get it with the rotor. You're gonna have that and a relocation bracket from this kit you're not even gonna use. But it's like when you go get fast food and you're like, no, I don't want the drink. Just give me the burger and the fries. And they're like, sir, it's literally cheaper and you get a drink. Just get the meal. And you can hang that rotor on the wall. It looks pretty. But from there, we need to talk about the brakes. And you might be thinking,
what's wrong with the brakes that comes on the Warp 9 kit? You just get those, they're fine. I don't need a big 4-pot caliper on the front. I don't care about all that.
All right, shut up. You're talking so much. We're showing what it takes to make a bike like the Sherco. The Sherco has a giant 4-pot caliper on the front, Brembo, with a Brembo Master. Let's see what it takes to get these other bikes that type of brake setup. The Sherco is $0.99 because it comes that way. When it comes to equipping these other bikes, it's real expensive, getting close to $2,000 to do that on some of these bikes. A relocation bracket that puts a Brembo caliper on the front, harder to come by on a lot of these bikes than you think. So I instead went with something that I know about, which is a Moto Master kit. I ran one on the XR650R that puts a big 320 rotor on there. It's got its own little relocation bracket. It lets it run a 4-pot caliper, its own, well, it's not its own master. It's actually a Magura HC1, which is a great master and a steel line. This is a full kit. We could technically argue the Brembo might be better, maybe a little, but I would actually say that the rotor is an upgrade. I would actually love to have a Moto Master flame rotor. And you also might be asking yourself at this point, hey, why didn't we just go with the Warp 9 floating and then save ourselves a little bit of money by not getting the Moto Master kit with a rotor? We could just got the caliper and the relocation bracket, master cylinder, and here's the deal. I've tried doing that because we actually had a funny mix-up when we first built my XR650R with a MotoMaster kit. We had the wrong rotor. I tried to run a Warp 9 floating rotor. First time though, I got hard up on it. I warped the front rotor. Just warped it. In fact, I thought it was just something, I just had like a bad rotor, so I had another one sent to me by Warp 9, and I warped that one. And I even know that Warp 9 themselves have tried developing their own 4-pot caliper or rebadging one, whatever they've tried doing, and they're having the same problem. The Warp 9 rotor is perfectly fine on the stock caliper with a relocation bracket. You can do big old stoppies, you can take it to the track. I've done all that with them, but for some reason, when you put a big 4-pot on there, they can't handle it. So we've gone with the MotoMaster kit, which ended up being the same price for every single model, $969. Was a good price I found. It was a little bit of a sell price. That's a great brake setup. I loved it on my XR. Suspension, KYB fully adjustable suspension front and rear, arguably a very good brand, and this has been tuned by Technical Touch. They've gone through it and valved and sprung it correctly for Supermoto. You can tell it is, it feels firm. There's a special way to set a bike up for Supermoto. And again, just like the brakes, there's probably a lot of you saying, why do I need to do that? Or I can just tune the adjusters a little bit. If your goal with your motard bike is to rip wheelies up and down the street, you don't need all that. You can do whatever. I mean, that's why you can buy a DRZ if that's what you want to do. I know I'm not the greatest rider in the world, but I can really tell in the Sherco's fork and rear shock is really good. It's incredibly good confidence on that front end. And if you want to get it on that level, man, it is expensive to reval and respring most of these bikes. And it's one of these crazy things. You can spend a little bit of money on suspension or a holy crap amount of money on suspension. So I've tried to kind of find some middle grounds here, got some quotes, and I've got a few different options here. Check this out. Again, though, the Sherco comes set up, so it's $0. The Husky 501 and the KTM 500. I'm gonna go with a quote that I got from our good buddy Moto Cannon Matt here. For a full suspension setup on his 501 to get it Supermoto tuned and pay someone else to do it, because I know a lot of people don't want to mess with it. $1,800, 25. That's like, hey, I'm going to a specialist and having them do it. I mean, that's not just the forks, that's the shock too. That's still, I would still say it's on the low end. You can get really nutty with suspension, but I did try to do things a little different, right? For some of the other bikes. I think I set the gas up the same way. Sorry, I lied. Beta and the CRF, I kind of just went on Racetech's website and priced out gold valves for the front, the rear, springs, oil. I think we ended up just rounding it down a little bit to about $1,000. I could play around with it, make it a little more, make it a little less. It just kind of depends on what stuff you want to add in there while you're doing it. But I'd say $1,000 in parts to do the front and rear is extremely reasonable if you're comfortable doing that yourself. And these options are still you taking your suspension off and bringing it to somebody. I didn't come up with a quote for like, hey, roll your bike in and get it done. That would be the most expensive. In fact, that's something to be said for all this so far. All of this will require labor by you and some know-how, and time isn't free in my opinion. Yeah, suspension is definitely not a cheap item. One of the other really cool things that the Sherco came with was exhaust. It's a full titanium Acro, that thing, I don't know. And again, keeping in the spirit, what will it cost to price out your bike with the same system? Husky 501, KTM 500, the header, the full system, $1,553. But you can get a stainless steel system for about $857. On the Beta, I found an FMF $798. The Honda, I found a nice Yosh stainless system, $789. So again, I'm cheating a little bit on some of these categories here. It's also worth mentioning that on some of these bikes, they've got a pretty good header already. You can throw a slip on if they got some kind of cat in there. And I think some of the bikes, like the Beta, already has a pretty opened exhaust on it. The Honda definitely has stuffed up, catted exhaust. You want to open them up and you want to get them running right. Now, the other problem though with that is tuning. Once you open these bikes up a bit, you're going to want to be able to tune them. Now, the Sherco has a factory tunable flashable ECU. It comes with a dual map switch. It's a really cool type of dual map switch because it's the kind you can literally just flip that thing on the fly. It's a physical button. It stays where you left it. There's no, oh, I turn my bike off and on. I got to turn this on and that off. I know in some of the newer KTM Husky gas bikes, there's got a lot of that. I don't have to mess with it. It came that way from the factory, so I've got zero into tuning. A number of these other bikes have lockdown ECUs. You can't get into them. I really tried to dig into this and see if it was as bad as I thought it was. What I can see on the gas, KTM, and Husky, you got to replace it now. I thought you would still be able to tune it. It looks like the best option is get the ECU from, I think, Athena. It looks like it's Oof, $1,038. I do know the good thing though with these three bikes is if you do those mods, if you put a full exhaust and a Git ECU, probably faster than the Sherco. I think we've got to get together with Matt because I think Matt's is set up that way. I'll skip the beta for a second. Let's talk about the Honda. Everybody's heard about this. The Honda, the stock ECU, it's flame out all the time. I thought everyone was overplaying that up. There's no way it's that bad. I've ridden a few now. It's crazy. If you just pull a clutch in, it just stalls. I've heard people say 550 performance can flash them. I don't know enough about that. I was trying to read into that, and from what I could figure out, there's still some limits within the ECU. If you're only allowed a few degrees this way and a few degrees that way, and you need to go a good ways over, that's not going to be available to you. You can only do so much. I had to come up with something on there. The Vortex is the one that a lot of people ran on the Honda. $750. I think you can put a Git ECU on it, which is $1,000, and I think that's a better ECU from the research I did. But I went with the cheaper option, the Vortex, just to try to keep the price down. With the Beta, guess what? $0.99. Got a flashable ECU like the Sherco, and from the little bit of digging around that I saw on the internet, a lot of people said the dealers just did it for free. That's super cool. I love hearing that. I've also heard, by the way, that the Beta, in comparison with some of these other bikes, I've read a review. I don't know if the Sherco was in it. Apparently one of the snappiest bikes in there, which is funny because I don't think it's even quite a 500. I think much like the Sherco, I think the Beta is like a 470 something. It's a lot to do to a bike, but if you do those things, I honestly think that you would have an equivalent bike to the Sherco. We could argue some odds in here and there, but if you showed up with the following stuff done that I just showed to any one of those bikes, that's a cool bike right there. And it may very well be better or worse than the Sherco. I don't know. That's not, hey, if somebody wants to give me the $100,000 we're going to need to run this experiment. I've already got the one bike. I just need to build the other 5 bikes and then test them all. I'm down. Another thing though that I didn't bring up is things like shipping. All those parts that we were talking about, you're gonna have to ship them to yourself, and that's not gonna be free. There's gonna be taxes on all that stuff as well. So the final prices will be more than that. You're gonna have to put a bunch of your time and labor into it or pay somebody else to. Husky is gonna be the most expensive one. And like I said, this is the one we said was probably the most comparable. Over $20,000. KTM, $19,947. The gas, $18,651. The Beta is honestly not a bad deal. It's $16,029. And the best deal, of course, is the Honda at $15,059. But of course, the Sherco wins at $12,999. Here's something I will admit though, buying our bike built up this way, there's a certain thing that we are missing that these other bikes will not be missing, and that is a set of dirt wheels. Now, if you go to this other level and go to this level of commitment with the suspension and the brake, throwing the dirts back on, it's not the best setup for it. Let's say you took your stock wheels and tires off and you sold them and were able to even out the cost of the Warp 9 kit. I don't think you could. I think you'd still be a little the other way. Let's just say hypothetically you could delete the cost of the Supermoto Warp 9 kit. Saves you a few bucks. Or go the other way with the SM kit and have 2 sets of wheels. I don't have that. That's a value you have that I don't have. And having a Supermoto with a set of dirt wheels is totally awesome. I had that on a number of my bikes. And so with all that in mind, what I really want to know is, why don't you like me, man? Why haven't you hit the like button yet?
I'm trying to come up with things to do here. It's super cold outside and raining still. I'm still getting over a cold, and it seemed like a fun idea for a video. A number of you who watch these videos on the radio aren't even subscribed, so it helps me out. It's a number that's helpful. Please, thank you.
And there's longer uncensored versions of these videos over on Patreon, just $1 a month to access everything. It's like $1 a month. You can go back and watch the stuff I did like 7 years ago on Patreon. They've been having longer cuts for years. They're better. And you get access to the Discord. You can call me. People call me all the time. My phone just rings, like it's like, oh, Jim from the Discord wants to say what's up. I'm like, what up, Jim? He's like, ah. I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? I'm whoring myself out for $1 a month, okay?
When I saw this bike, I saw everything it was coming with. I really want to do this. This seems really cool. And I'd already been kind of flirting with the idea of jumping into something really different. I just appreciate what this is. I would like to go to the track more. I've got these GP2 tires on it now. I can't wait to get back out there. Got a bunch of other cool parts that are gonna be going on it. That's gonna be coming soon. So if you wanna see me mod this thing out and do some cool stuff to it, stick around and we'll get out to the track when it warms up a bit. So yes, I know I've said it's the most cheapest Supermoto you can get when you say it's street legal and what I call a real Supermoto and all the crap involved. Yes, there's a lot of, I'm being a little fast and loose with it, like a politician and some statistics they want to throw out there. But you get what I'm saying? Does it make any sense to you? I don't think I've gone totally insane.
We'll see you guys next video. Goodbye.